There's no replacement for these 5 things. And when there's a breakup, it's exceedingly hard, especially if the person is young. Why? Because the relationship represents the whole future. They know there are other people, but it sort of feels like the whole world is shutting down. The brain has to think that the person is gone in time and space. This has become much harder with social media, right? Because people can check up on people, they can hear from people. In the old days, like when I was growing up, you just like took the phone off the hook, or you diverted your attention. Now we are constantly renewing that the person is still there. And so love and the loss of love and the death grief are virtually identical. It's that motivational state. And this is why it's so hard to not reach out to somebody that you really miss and want back.
I saw a study last week that had researchers asking participants to rate emotional and physical pain of a breakup. They found that women tend to be more negatively affected by breakups, reporting high levels of both physical and emotional pain. But while breakups hit women the hardest, they tended to recover more fully. Men, on the other hand, rarely fully recovered. I thought that was very interesting. I wasn't too sure what that meant.
Yeah, it's interesting. It also rings true with my experience and my observations. This could relate to a number of things, and here I'm painting with a broad brush, right? How comfortable one is feeling their feelings, is male or female, is going to strongly dictate how quickly one moves through grief. This is the same thing as trauma. The more willing someone is to feel the full depth and intensity of the feelings that they associate with that trauma, the more quickly they're going to move through the trauma. Again, I'm lifting from Paul Conti's words, so these aren't mine, but people use a number of strategies. They use distraction. They use states like, they sublimate to things like anger and avoidance of various kinds in order to not feel the traumatic feelings or not feel the breakup. People will, try and self-soothe with alcohol or try and self-soothe with multiple new partners or whatever it happens to be. It doesn't work. It just extends it because this map of space, time, and closeness needs to be fractured. And the only way to do that is for the brain to have to confront the reality, which is that by breakup, they are no longer available. It's like the food on the other side of that wall is gone. It's just not there anymore. Or that the food that was accessible, now there's a wall in between and you will not get through it. And you can see this actually in animal studies that are kind of hard. They're actually very hard to watch. You'll see the animal perseverate, literally damage its own body trying to get through a barrier to something it's highly motivated to see. People do that post-breakup. They usually do that by talking to everybody about the breakup, which is its own form of perseverating on the motivation. What did I do? What did I do wrong? This and that. And some of that analysis is healthy, some of it's not. Now, why would one group be, let's just say, effective at dealing with breakups? It's probably the ability to really feel the full intensity of how sad it is and be able to confront that. I think from a very early age, there's an ability that, at least I'm sure it transcends to women too, learning to pack down feelings, right? And so when are we really talking about when we're talking about pack down feelings? I'm not a psychologist, but what we learn is top-down control, forebrain to autonomic control. It's the same thing like, I don't want to jump off the high dive, or I don't want to do this public speaking, but I'm gonna kind of like, I'm just going to force myself. I'm going to David Goggins it, right? Grief is an autonomic state. We say it has valence, it has negative valence, but it's high levels of autonomic arousal with a negative connotation, because you can be high levels of autonomic arousal with happiness, right? You can be very alert and aroused and happy, very alert and aroused and sad. It's very alert and aroused and sad, and yet we learn how to tamp that down. What is tamping down? It's reducing our heart rate. It's going to work each day, being a functional human being. There's a lot of that, rather than allowing ourselves to, sob uncontrollably into a pillow. Some people are better at this. The late Steve Jobs was a big proponent of scream therapies. He used to go up into the hills behind Stanford. He actually still owns a property back there. He was really into, catharsis, cathartic release of internal state that he felt would allow him to return as a happier, nicer person. He was also kind of well known for screaming at people in the office. So he obviously had a lot pent up inside. So I think the better that we can lean into the emotional states that we fear the most, but in a controlled way where we're not harming ourselves or other people, the better. The more that we try and avoid that, and we try and sublimate or just, and I've done this, so I'm speaking from experience, I would use the anger or the sadness from an experience to just work 10 times longer, 10 times harder, to just get that much more focus. You're taking that autonomic arousal, that narrow aperture and that energy, and you're putting it onto something that moves your life forward. So in some cases that's good because you still need to function. But it can give you here I'll just say, it gave me the illusion that I was working through something because you get all the accoutrements and rewards of hard work. But what you don't do is remap that space-time closeness map. And then I guarantee you find yourself 5 or 10 years later wondering why you're so exhausted or why certain things in life aren't going well. And it's because when they say you haven't dealt with the loss, you never actually allowed yourself to feel the feelings. But once you do, it's like a valve, it releases. There's no replacement for these 5 things. And I could say in no particular order, but let's start with one that everyone needs to get sufficient amount of quality sleep most nights.
8 hours?
Some
6
people
hours?
need 5. Most people need between 6 and 8. Teenagers, young kids, let them sleep as much as they want.
Here's the thing. I'm a night owl. I go to bed later.
It's okay. Whenever allows you to feel functional for your life.
Okay.
Okay. And that sometimes changes over time.
Sure.
Okay. So for me, I need about 7 hours a night. I can get by on 6, 8, sometimes great. More than 8, I start feeling groggy. So try and get that most nights of your life. Nobody's perfect.
Okay.
Nobody's perfect and things happen.
Sleep, very important.
Sleep is very important. Try and make sure you're getting sleep. If you wake up in the middle of the night, use Reverie or NSDR or some other tool to help you get back to sleep. And we have a sleep toolkit at hubermanlab.com, completely zero cost. You don't have to sign up. You can just download it. It has all the stuff to help you optimize sleep. Okay. Sleep is number 1. Number 2, it is important to get movement, like about it, and ideally an hour a day of some sort of movement.
Okay.
If you're skateboarding, great. Walking's low key at a minimum, but you're trying to get some movement where your heart rate's up and your breathing
Vigorous
is up.
movement.
Yeah. So skateboarding could be many hours, but depending on, but an hour a day of weightlifting or running or cycling or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, if that's your thing. Or,
Jump rope?
What's that?
Jump roping?
Jump rope is great.
So vigorous movement.
Get some movement. Get your heart rate up, get your breathing up.
Okay.
You'll live longer, you'll feel better. So many reasons.
Beautiful.
Cardiovascular health, brain health, so many reasons.
Okay.
So sleep, movement every day. If you miss 1 day per week, that's okay, but then get right back to it. Just figure out a way.
Okay.
Hotel room, doesn't matter. Could be burpees, could be jumping jacks, whatever. Next one, sunlight. Get some sunlight in your eyes, ideally in the morning. If you wake up before the sun comes out, flip on bright lights and then get outside once the sun is out. Just get as much sunlight as you can. Wear sunscreen if that's your thing. Some people do, some people don't, but just so don't burn, don't get skin cancer, but get sunlight in your eyes and don't stare at the sun.
Got you.
You'll know if you're staring at it too long because it'll hurt.
Nighttime, reverse that.
Nighttime, limit the bright light exposure. Dim those lights, maybe buy the inexpensive red light bulbs. And really the cheapest ones are great. You're really just trying to get dim red light. If you want to do red light therapy, that's a whole other discussion. Okay, so then it's sunlight is the third. Nutrition.
Yes.
Keto, carnivore, omnivore, vegan, vegetarian, whatever. Just try and get 75 to 80% of your food from non-processed or minimally processed foods. And if you can get 100% of it from that, great. But, you got to live life every once in a while. You got to have an ice cream cone, a slice of pizza. It's okay.
Chips Ahoy cookie.
You're not going to dissolve into a puddle of tears, hopefully. So that's really key.
Okay.
And then, of course, some people are overweight. They need to lose weight. Some people are underweight. They need to gain weight. Some people don't like to eat early in the day. I don't really like to eat breakfast. I'm more of first meal around 10, 11.
Me too.
But today I knew I was coming here and I was kind of hungry because I went to bed so damn early last night. So I ate on the way here. Okay, so figure out what works for you. Then the next thing would be, so we've got sleep, movement, sunlight, nutrition. Social connection.
Social connection.
Just do what you can to make the interactions that you have online and in reality with friends, with family, as healthy as possible. And listen, I'm no psychologist, but I can tell you that sometimes the best way to think about it is, and this sounds really kind of woo, but whatever, I'm 47, I'm comfortable and enough with myself, I can say this. I believe as being as in contact with people as allows you to be in your most loving stance. And sometimes that means not at all, right? There's some people you just in order to continue to love them at all, You just cannot communicate with these people. Some people, because you have to communicate with them and it's a nightmare, you just try and make it as minimal as possible. Other people, you adore them, spend as much time with them as you possibly can.
Right.
I really mean that. Like your friends, your family, like your partner, whoever, like your kid, if you adore them, spend as much time with them as you possibly can while not giving up your profession and your health.
Sure.
Right. And some people are more introverted, some people are more extroverted. It's just all of that, but quality social connection. And then I think the one thing we left out is hydration.
Yes.
Try and drink enough water, make sure you get enough electrolytes. That's key too. Once you have those things in place and I would list them out. I'd certainly list them out. And I'm just like, am I paying attention to these things each day? Because when I don't, I start to veer more toward the kind of high performance stuff. Because yes, get your cold shower, your ice bath. But if you're doing that, but you're not paying attention to your sleep or you're eating not well, well, then you're focusing on the wrong things. But those 5 things are your core of, they're going to give you buoyancy. I guarantee if you do those 5 things, pay attention to those things every day, there's zero probability that you're going to fail overall, right? Yeah. There's just no way. Your mental health and physical health is going to benefit. It's inevitable. The issue is that people start thinking about what's the magic solution. And the one exception to this is if somebody is so depressed or in a psychotic episode, or they're just so like pinned down by trauma, that's when you really have to say, okay, there's some other interventions. Sure, but I think that the great success of a guy like David Goggins, who I happen to be blessed to know and is every bit as intense as he appears, I always say, and it's true, is that he was really back on his heels in life, like super overweight, working a job he hated, all this stuff, hating himself. And rather than say, okay, I got to get my life in order and then I'm going to start doing all the things to take care of myself, it's like light bulb went off and he started taking care of himself.
Right.
I mean, and tons of running, but taking care of himself as a way to feel better, to be able to go do more. And so we tend to get it backwards. We think when we're back on our heels, we need to like fix the problem and then get forward center of mass. And these are actions and you do every day. And again, they're zero cost. I didn't invent them.
Right.
I'm just here to share them where I can.